have your camera on?
Yes, I do. Let me check.
Because I can't see you. I still cannot see you. I still only see the dots.
Unknown participant is now joining.
And just for everybody's information, we have started the streaming on YouTube.
Thank you, Carla. So Carla, unfortunately, I mean, we thought that we were going to be able to see everyone on camera, but I don't think that's working.
There is, have you tried the three dots at the top
Yeah.
of the screen? Okay. And you still can't see me in large gallery?
No. All I see is the kind of circles with initials.
And can you see me, Carla?
Yes, I can. I have 12 screens available.
Okay.
Kim, you're showing up twice.
As is Cindy.
Okay.
Well,
Yes, I see that.
I don't know why I'm showing up twice, but I'm disappointed that I cannot see anyone else. Carla, why don't you, I guess I'll have to rely on those of you in the office to tell me some things. Carla, why don't you tell me when folks are situated and we can start the meeting?
Madam Chair, I think what's happening in large gallery view, there are icons for everyone in the meeting across the bottom, and anyone whose video is on is appearing on the screen.
Right, except on my screen, Bill, I'm still only seeing the icons. So
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah.
And I checked with Jason in the IT department, and he didn't have any suggestions.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know why that is. All other platforms I get to view people, but.
Would you consider exiting and rejoining?
Sure, I will do that right now. So Bill, now I can see you.
Okay.
But only you. I don't know.
Is large gallery available for you to select now?
It is not.
I'm sorry about that.
Yes. I wonder if it has something to do with my browser. I don't know. But well, let's get started. And if that will be a little problematic with this hybrid format, but we'll try. Okay. So for anyone else or for everyone else, if you turn on your video, if you turn on your camera, you should be able to see each other. And just ask your video. And would just ask everyone to turn off their mic if they're not speaking. And welcome to the Comprehensive Rezoning and Update Task Force meeting. We're going to take a roll call since I can't see anyone. Al Nickerson? Just unmute yourself if I call your name and tell me you're here. Al Nickerson?
Mr. Nickerson is here.
Okay. Bill Norris.
I'm here.
Great. Bill Sutton. I know I spoke to Bill earlier. Bill, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
Wonderful. Brian Greenwood.
Here.
Buck Nickerson. Buck, are you there?
Buck is here.
Okay.
I'm not sure why we can't hear him.
I can see you for a second, Carla. I know you're there. Chicky Shivwani.
Here.
Cindy Genther.
Cindy's here.
Jim Rich. Jim, are you there? Okay. James Saunders. James, are you with us? Okay, maybe Mr. Saunders is not with us. Joe Hickman.
Here.
Pat Langenfelder.
Here.
Paul Ruge.
Here.
Sam Shogi.
I'm here.
And Tom Mason. Tom, are you with us?
Tom is here.
Okay, thank you, Carla. So we wanted to start this evening's meeting with a moment of silence and dedicate the meeting to our friend and fellow Planning Commission member, Doug McGargy, who passed away unexpectedly just 2 weeks ago. Okay, and then we're going to move on with the approval of the summary for the task force meeting on February 10th. For those of you that were with us earlier this month, we were unable to proceed with our March meeting due to some technology issues, which I think we've resolved this evening for the most part. So in reviewing the minutes for the February 10th meeting, are there any corrections or additions?
I make a motion that we accept the minutes as shown.
Thank you, Pat. Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Wonderful. Okay, so the minutes will be accepted as submitted. And since there were no additions or corrections, just assuming the majority is in agreement with that.
Madam Chair, if you could just take a vote, ask for all in favor.
Okay.
Not a roll call.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
The motion carries.
So moving on, we just wanted to remind everyone why we are here. And we're relying on this task force to provide input, encouraging everyone to share their ideas openly and freely. We're looking for innovative and thoughtful changes to the county's zoning regulations in ways that simplify regulatory processes and add new uses. So keep in mind, there's no right or wrong answers. We're just here to have a discussion. Bill, is there anything you'd like to add there?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think that when we start having substantive discussions, as we prepare the summaries from those meetings, I'll be focused on where we find consensus and thoughts, and that way those summaries can reflect the ideas that were the winning ideas for the group as we move forward.
Okay. For old business, I don't believe we have any old business, and Bill just asked you to confirm that.
Yes, ma'am.
And for deferred business, just a reminder, as I mentioned, our March 10th meeting, we do have some items that will be scheduled for discussion at a later meeting. And I think we are ready to proceed with new business. I'm going to turn this over to Bill so that he can, I think, Sean are going to walk us through the presentation of a proposed chapter.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And before we hear from Mr. Sean Suter about the two model districts, Carla and I want to touch on the selected zoning districts that are being combined into first the residential model district and then the commercial model district. For the proposed residential model district, two districts being combined are the community residential and the rural residential. The allowed uses in the two districts are nearly identical. The community residential district is designed for properties located near existing developed areas, villages, and incorporated towns, while the rural residential district is designed for properties within existing rural development and those areas designated as neighborhood development areas in the comp plan. As a result, all the permitted uses, special exceptions, and accessory uses are the same, except that the rural residential district allows 5 uses not included in the community residential district: aquaculture, dog kennels, maintaining more than 4 horses and mules on parcels less than 20 acres, the limited raising of livestock, and sand and gravel pits. The density for the two is different as well. The district for parcels outside of developed areas, in other words, the community residential district, allows up to 1 unit per acre for individual lots, while the rural residential district is limited to 1 unit per 3 acres. The setbacks are identical in both districts, although minimum lot size is 2-tiered. Community residential allows lots as small as a half an acre, which is the same as rural residential, except where public water and sewer are unavailable in rural residential, then 3/4 of an acre is required. For the proposed commercial model district, the two districts being combined are the Crossroads Commercial Zoning District and the Commercial Zoning District. These two districts are also alike. However, they do vary from each other to a greater degree than the two residential districts just compared. Crossroads Commercial is located on the intersections of major highways and focuses on providing services to the local community with retail limited to 20,000 square feet. Commercial is located along major arterial highways and focuses on destinations and more regionally oriented services with retail limited to 60,000 square feet, except when allowed by special exception or along Route 301. Although the uses are similar, those uses with a larger service area, such as shopping centers, are allowed in the commercial zoning district, but not in the Crossroads Commercial Zoning District. The new use, data processing centers, is allowed in the commercial district, but not in the Crossroads Commercial. The required setbacks are identical in both districts, and neither of the districts requires a minimum lot area. There are no stated density limitations or floor area ratios included in either zoning district, and accessory apartments are allowed by right. However, apartment buildings are not allowed in either district. And I know Carla has some things to talk about from GIS data.
Thank you, Bill. Yes, so I took some of our assessment data that we have on individual parcels, and I'm just going to give you some of those numbers. We looked at how many acres are zoned for each commercial or community residential and rural residential. There are 4,275 acres zoned community residential and about 2,300 acres zoned rural residential. Within the community residential district, there are 1,900 parcels where the center of the parcel falls within that district. We have a lot of split zoning, so it can be hard to select parcels that are in a zoning district. So we tried to do the best and found that there are about 45% of the parcels in community residential that are less than half an acre. And I know that there was some interest in kind of thinking about what the subdivision potential might be. And so we also looked to see how many parcels are at least 2 acres or greater. And there are about 258 of those. And we use the 2-acre limit because at one dwelling unit per acre, you'd need at least 2 acres to be able to subdivide. I will say it helps a little bit if you're in the building here in this room to have only one headphone on or none at all. So I'll try to just kind of give a quick summary. We also looked at the number of parcels that are zoned rural residential and determined there are about 52 of those that are 6 acres or greater, which again, that would be the minimum size you'd need to be able to do a subdivision. And then there are about 10 of those that are more than 50 acres. There are about 8 parcels community residential that are 50 acres or greater. So that just gives you a sense of how many lots might be available. It's hard to make an exact number because there's so many things that could influence that, such as wetlands, steep slopes, other development that's already happened. And then just quickly for the commercial, there's about 300 acres that's zoned commercial or crossroads commercial. So that's a very small area. And those parcels range in size from about 2/10 of an acre to 20 acres, plus one parcel that has 75 acres. Any quick questions before we turn it over to Sean to kind of go through his model layout?
Yeah, this is Sam. Thanks for expanding on that. It's kind of helpful for additional context. Is there a way to visualize this by any chance, especially with some of the proposed changes and the number of structures per acre? I wonder if there's a way that we can kind of, I guess, show that on a map just to better visualize what 1 acre, one house per acre looks like relative to 3/4 acres, relative to 2 acres, et cetera, et cetera. Is that something we could potentially consider doing just as an additional form of context?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Bill, are we ready to? Sean, I think it's your turn.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Good evening. Nice to see everyone again. So last time we talked, which I believe was early in March, maybe the 1st of March. No, February. I don't know. Time's flying. Last time we talked, though, we talked about the structure of the code. And what I heard from you all confirmed what my thinking was with that is that it's overly complicated. It's repetitive. It's wordy. It's too long. It's just simply not easy to use. So one of the main thrusts of this project is going to make this code much simpler to use, much more streamlined and user-friendly. So once we kind of put together a draft table of contents and an outline showing you how we can streamline the code and simplify things, the next step is what we've provided, which is a mock-up of what a district or two, in this case 2 districts, we picked a commercial and a residential, and what those would look like potentially as far as how it would lay out in the codebook. The goal is to include all of the relevant information, regulatory information, the information that helps the user and the administrator know what can and cannot be done in the zone, in a way that is as simple as possible, but also clear and, of course, consistent. And so that's the goal, and that's what we're trying to do. Like we talked about last time, using graphics, whether they be bird's eye view or plan view graphics, and we can talk about the difference, words and charts and tables. That combination tends to at least hit all the major ways people consume information. So the idea is, how do we give this to the user in a way that's easily consumable? Okay, so that's the goal. And so what we do when we work with communities all over, we try to find the right mix of all of this, the right mix of information, the right way for the community to depict things, and for the community to be able to consume this, what is complicated information, but we try to make it as simple as possible. I'd like to share my screen real quick just to give you a sense, if I could. Let's see here. Yeah, here we go. Can you see that? On the left of the screen is what you have now, so I thought it was important to, I believe it's important to keep going back to what you have so that you can compare it with what we're proposing. And I think that really illuminates the difference, the simplification of what we're trying to do. So you can see on the left is the current commercial district. It is 13 pages total. As we talked about last time, it goes through statement of intent, then permitted principal uses, and then it goes into special exceptions, all while kind of weaving through specific use regulations, accessory uses and structures, and then it gets into development standards, density, area, height, width, and yard requirements, all without the benefit of any sort of graphics. It just sort of throws these concepts out at you. Then it talks about general standards and environmental standards, and it just goes through all of that. Then commercial design standards. And it does this for, and I'm still in the same zone here. I'm still in the commercial zone. Just keeps going. It does this for 13 pages, okay? And it does this for every single one of your districts. That's why the code is cumbersome. There's just a lot of information being presented that could be consolidated. So that's what we're working with. That's what we're starting from. How do we get, all this information is important. It's not that we're not going to be regulating a lot of these things or addressing a lot of these things in the new code. It's just a matter of where we put things and how we consolidate things so that it's much easier to use. So the new Commerce District, or as proposed, starts out with a graphic. Okay. The importance of that is to give the user right out of the chute a visual idea of the development pattern in this particular zone or district. So it's not intended to be regulatory or to say that this is required. This is just giving you an illustration of what this district is. And each district would start out with this illustration. We're working with our partner NV5 out of their New Jersey and Philadelphia office, and they're helping us with these graphics. And they're doing custom graphics for Kent County. These are not off the shelf. These are graphics based on their review of the county and the development patterns. So that's pretty cool. I think that's going to be a real benefit to the code. And we're working with them very closely. But so that's how it starts. Kind of give you a visual idea. Then we always get into first, kind of like you do now, the intent. You know, what are we trying to accomplish with this zone or district? And so we like to use as plain speak as possible in here, just giving people an idea if they read through this. This gives you a flavor for what are the development patterns, what are the uses, you know, what are we trying to accomplish in this zone. The next set of regulations, and I can, let me just, sorry, let me just try to, here we go. The next set, and we move right into uses. The reason we do this in this code in particular is because uses seem to be probably the paramount regulatory issue in the county. It's less about, since there's not a lot of development and it's not a dense urban environment, it's less about the building placement, although that is important. It is not as important, it seems to me, that as uses are. And so that's what we go right into, and we start talking about the uses, and we go right into a use table for this specific district. So that, you know, if someone has asked the question, which people often do, hey, I've got property and I'm in the Commerce District, what can I do with it? That's probably the biggest question that staff gets, and the biggest question that a property owner has. What can I do with this property? What can't I do with this property? Well, the district tables, use tables here, again, should be very simple to use. We have principally permitted uses, and we would have a definition for what that is. That is a by right use, and we indicate that with a PP. A special exception, principal use, meaning it's not permitted by right. It requires additional review under the special exception standards, but it's your primary use of your property, so that would be an SEP. And these are, we can work through these. These aren't written in stone. I've got a car alarm going off outside. I apologize for that. I am in a dense urban environment, so you get all kind of wild stuff. The permitted accessory uses, the PA, and those are accessory uses that would be permitted by right. No need for any additional reviews or hearings, just to make sure it complies. And then a special exception accessory use, which is, you know, yes, this is customary or could be customary and incidental to your principal use. We just have to review it. There's an additional, you know, set of standards we have to look at. The long and short of it is, you start out and you should be able to, and these are really, this is really a spread of 2 pages, okay? So these are side-by-side pages. You should be able to look and say, okay, I'm in the Commerce District, you know, I really want to do a bank, and look over here and see financial institution, PP, or I really want to do a data center permitted, right? So it should be pretty simple to use. Then we get into lot and building standards. So this is where, you know, you want to build something, or you want to add on new construction or additions. You know, what can I build here? Well, I know I can use it for a bank, but what does that mean? Like, what can I do? So where can I put the bank on the property? Where do I have to put the bank on the property? How do I, where do I put the parking? All that kind of stuff, landscaping. And so that's what this next spread is all about. We talk about lot and building standards, and we refer to the table. So it should be very simple to look and say, okay, the front setback, it has to have a minimum of 50 feet. And we include a regulatory graphic. It's different from an illustrative graphic. It's intended to actually have some regulatory use to it, and which couples with the table, so that, you know, for those who might be more inclined to, you know, look at a bird's eye view like this and see, oh, the front setback is 50 feet. Oh, that makes sense. That also defines the front setback, you know, rather than just looking at a table. There's multiple ways to use this, but it should be simple, right? So the parking lot setback, for example, 5 feet minimum. Well, that gives you an idea of, you know, what that means. Front yard setback. Now, this is not to scale. This is, you know, a bit, you know, it's just kind of describing what these things are, right? So this would give you an idea of the kind of development that you could do. The way this zone is set up, you know, we're trying to push the parking off to the side or to the rear of the property. We're trying not to have a big parking lot in the front. Yet, you know, this isn't a dense urban environment. We don't need the properties to be right up along the road. A nice green setback is appropriate for the county development pattern in a lot of places. And so in this zone, we would give it a setback. Same with the side. There has to be some space. And then the specific standards around, you know, things like the parking lot. Well, what are the dimensions, required minimum dimensions of a parking space? How much landscaping has to be in a parking lot? What kind of landscaping? All of those specific standards relative to landscaping, signage, parking, those kinds of things, those would be handled in a different section of the code that would explain that generally applicable to all the zones and districts. Now, we can add as much detail into these districts as you would like. We could add sign standards in here. We could add the parking, but then you're starting to get back to what you have now, which is every district having the same information repeated over and over again. So what we're trying to do is include the pertinent information in the district, and then refer you to the generally applicable one-stop chapter for all that stuff, no matter what zone you're in. And then the third page does add a little detail, right, around sign standards. So here are the different sign types. Now, we don't define them in this district. We would do that in the generally applicable section. That's what I was referring to before. So we don't have to define what a freestanding sign is in every single district. We can do that once in the code and then refer back to it here. So you can see there would be dimensions for people who are interested in putting up a monument sign or a freestanding sign. You know, how many can I have? How big can it be? How high? That kind of stuff. Can it be lit? Not. And so that's what this table would tell you. There may be some things, you know, down here that are, you know, asterisks, notes, some specific regulations that we might want to include, but, you know, not to the extent that we do in the current code. Same with the parking standards. We have, you know, whatever level of detail you want to include in here. But like I said, the parking space, you know, parking orientation, angled, perpendicular, parallel, that's going to be defined below, either in a glossary or in a generally applicable section, but it's referenced here so that, you know, all the information that you would need to do most things on commercial property is going to be right here in this, what is it, 5-6 pages, you know, side by side here. So that cuts it down in half from what you currently have for this district, and it puts it in tables charts, illustrative, and regulatory graphics. So that's sort of a high-level review of how we could lay this out. It's important that we get input and feedback at this stage in the process, because the next step is to build out all of the districts and zones in a format with graphics. That takes a lot of work, obviously, and so we want to make sure that we are moving in the right direction, so we don't have to come back and do a lot of, reworking it and backtracking. We want to get as much information from you as we can at this point in the project. So if we want to pause there maybe and get any reactions to this district, we can talk about the residential neighborhood. It's set up the same way, and we can talk about that after.
So this is Sam. I'll go ahead and comment that I think this is much simpler, and I think it definitely will be well received by the community in terms of just a resource to determine what project will work, and just the general things you have to do to make a project work. So as it relates to this, however, I'm wondering, and Bill, this may be for you in particular, but in terms of just the general feedback that we get from, our regular users, so our engineering companies, our architectural firms, what are some of the comments? And I don't know when an appropriate time is to have this conversation, but looking at this, would it better address some of the concerns that they have? And maybe even from the Board of Appeals perspective, I mean, what are some of the common things that keep coming up at Board of Appeals that could potentially be addressed in this rewrite and this new format that is being presented to us? Will this speak directly towards some of those issues?
Sam, this is Bill. I think I'd have to do a little review to identify Board of Appeals issues. For folks who are customers that contact us for information, I do think the compact presentation will be helpful. As Sean says, many people call with the question, what can I do with my property?
Right.
And currently we refer them to the code and explain there's a list of uses and how those lists work. I think this more compact approach will be helpful. And I do know there's other members of the task force who have touched on this issue and may have an opinion of how this will be received by users.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just want to make sure, some of those common feedback that we hear regularly are definitely being accounted for in this newly configured and simplified presentation. But Sean, I think your firm did a really good job, so I'm curious to hear the feedback from the other task force members. It looks great.
Thank you. I could not hear that. Having audio.
Joe, I think you need to put your.
Yeah, Sean,
I apologize.
couldn't hear it either, Joe. It was very low.
All right, I'm sorry. Now I hear myself twice.
Now I can hear
Sean,
you. Thank you.
I understand this. The practical end is what concerns me here. The format I can see could be much more pleasing to the eye. But in this case, we're combining two zoning districts, or proposing it. One that allows 20,000 square foot commercial buildings and one that allows 60,000. In the standards in C3 or 6.3a, I see minimums but no maximums. And then as a practical end, how do we account for areas now that are allowing 20,000 that could I guess possibly allow 60 or vice versa. The change, I guess I don't, is that not in here, or where will it be?
So that is referencing a minimum or maximum square footage for a commercial building.
Yes.
That I'd have to look back at the table, but it is not in here as far as a size of building. We have kind of regulated that differently relative to the setbacks, but we could include it. If and it probably is more so a maximum nowadays than it would be a minimum. Just depends on what you're trying to achieve. But I think what you're probably not trying to get in the commerce district is maybe a huge, like 100,000 square foot building, right? So if 60,000 is kind of the high end now in your district, we could max it at something like that, which would be a large grocery store type of thing. But yeah, we can include that. Certainly.
Well, I guess, excuse me, I'm confused because this is combining two districts that currently have different standards, whatever they should be. Are we intending to that make them the same? So what now is Crossroads commercial? At Crossroads, we could have 60,000 square foot buildings, where before we could have 20,000. I guess, is that the intent?
Yes.
Well,
I believe
it seems to me that that's more at the heart of the standards than the minimums, the height, abutting. I mean, that's a substantial change. You're at 3 times the amount of square footage in districts.
Mr. Vice
Square
Chair?
footage at Crossroads commercial.
This
It
is Bill
just seems
Mackey.
like that should be debated, and in the standard, as we review, it's nice to have it elucidated clearly, but the heart of it is you're changing the standards substantially. Or someone's proposing that. Maybe you, I don't know.
No,
If I could say something.
Can I add point that some of that size is going to be limited by the size of the property? And
I understand that,
and the
but
Crossroads-
still, we have crossroads that is, you could fill a whole lot then, just with these setbacks.
Yes, but I think they would. There really aren't too many large Crossroads commercials.
We don't know that. That's my point. You're proposing a substantial change in square footage, and it's glossed over as combining to make it useful, where the actual use on site is particularly important for people that already have uses there, and particularly people that are in a commercial now and they say, well, wait a minute, I bought the Food Line lot to get 60,000, but I could have bought it somewhere else and put it next to Molly's. I think those changes are substantive to me.
And I agree with you that they're substantive. This is Bill Mackey. And the focus of tonight's meeting really is the presentation style, the graphics, the sort of substance details we will certainly be covering at other meetings. And I know that for this particular issue, it would be easy enough to simply have either 2 uses on the chart or a use that toggles to different sizes based on where the property is located. My understanding is, and Carla can correct me if I'm wrong, all of Commerce is located in the Route 301 corridor? Or almost all of it?
You mean the commercial?
Yes.
Current commercial zoning?
Yeah.
Yes, the majority of that is on 301.
So we could certainly make the focus of that the cap is related to its location or contingency to where it's located next to the 301 corridor. And then all the crossroads sprinkled across the county wouldn't be eligible for the larger size.
So we're back to zoning.
There's certainly tools to use, and I don't. My intention was not to have this particular sample chapter revolve around real focused details like this. Those details are important, and I don't think we're intending to change any content at this point. that's helpful. And
Yeah,
I appreciate that. I guess to me that's the heart of it, is if we're combining a district that either the tables are clearly marked that way, which effectively means you still have two zoning districts if there's different standards. If you're going to have, we still have a crossroads in commercial. I understand what you're saying. I'm not trying to be, I just didn't know how it was going to be stated in here, because all we have is minimums, not maximums. Thank you.
Yeah, it's important to note that we're not at that point yet where we're getting into the details. This is just a demonstration right now of the layout and format. That's what I'm really looking for. But those are going to be fun conversations that we're going to have. And I don't think you need two districts. Like Bill said, I think it's a great idea to say, you know, property fronting 301 is eligible for up to 60,000 square feet. All other property in the zone, maximum of 20. I mean, it's as simple as literally one statement in the zoning district. So we can work through those things. But
okay, thank you.
Yeah, and those are the meaty conversations that we're going to be having. So I look forward to that.
And Sean, if I can add one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
We're starting at the very highest level, you know, the so-called 30,000 square foot view. So it's desirable to try to combine districts, to try to simplify. As we move through, there may be some of these combinations that just don't work, and we have to re-separate districts. And I think that can easily be part of a discussion. But that's sort of the process, is looking at the biggest picture, setting out goals for that, and then as we work through, seeing does that work, and can we bring that to the table at the end. So there may be more districts than proposed now, but it's part of these kinds of substance issues that have to be addressed. So that's helpful.
We had a minimum on here, not a maximum. That's if I had signed a maximum with no entry, that would have said at least it's going to be considered. It doesn't show, this table shows it being considered.
This is Buck Nickerson. I don't know whether, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sure.
I like the graphics. I like the text and how everything is laid out. I like the redundancy of having it, the same information in 2 or 3 places, just presented in different formats. We just have to be real careful that we keep all that consistent and there's no errors in there, no kind of loopholes, so to speak. But I think definitely think you're headed in the right direction for sure.
Great. Thank you.
This is Chicky Sijwani here. I second Mr. Nickerson on that. I think the concept itself, it's a great idea. I like how simple it is, easy for an end user or homeowner or whoever it is that wants to get something accomplished. But as Mr. Hickman said, we just need to clarify what areas fit the needs best, and then come back and rewrite it to the fitting areas as needed. But the simplicity, I don't want to muddy it by saying simplicity, but the simplicity of it was spot on.
Yeah, I think someone had a really good suggestion earlier, which was to visually see this. And it's possible that we could, that we will be able to map these districts out so you can see them. And then, we can talk about it, based on the proposed map and what those districts mean as far as the contents. So I think that's going to be important. It's a good suggestion.
This is Paul Ruge. I just like to add too. I think you do have really a very nice concept here. I think the only thing I think might be a little more helpful, you mentioned the diagrams that are here are not to scale. And I think the diagrams should be drawn to a scale, because what will happen is as you look at them, you're not going to realize, let's pick on the one in the Commerce, what 50 foot is in the front versus 30 on the side. If it's not to scale, you won't be able to picture that property correctly. And people will, as they read it, what can I say? They just won't interpret, the size that they're allowed or what the setbacks would do, what the actual effect of the setback would be. So I just think they should be done to scale.
Yeah, I agree with that. As I look at that one we were just looking at, it needs to be closer to scale. Like a 5 feet needs to be 5 feet small, much, relative to 50 feet. So, yeah, I'll let our partner on that know that, and we'll get that done. Good comment.
So this is Cindy Genther, and I have a comment. So our comments tonight on the materials presented should be focused more so on layout and not on content. And that's what we should be focusing our efforts tonight on, and that we will delve into content at a later time. Is that correct?
That's correct. And the reason for that is, changing this is a lot harder than changing, a number from 50 to 60 or 7, whatever whatever the community decides on in the tables. But we just want to make sure the layout is intuitive and you like that, so that then we can start focusing on that content. And if a PP needs to change to a SCP, that's very doable. Or we need to add something or subtract it. But when, what we've had in the past in some projects is, we forge ahead with these, and then, they come back, some of the clients come back and say, well, can we do it this way and that way? And it's a major change to update these, because these are, custom layouts. So that's why we're here, to make sure that this meets with your expectations and satisfaction.
Well, I second, this is Cindy again, I second and third the opinion that the format of the presentation of the presented materials is excellent. I think at a later time we'll go through the details, and we'll look forward to that.
Yeah, sounds good.
So this is Sam. I have one more comment. And just because branding is very important to me, I run the local chamber of commerce. So with regards to the overall final design that we settle on, I'm hoping that it aligns in many respects to the branding that the county just did with their new logo and the new color scheme that they adopted. I think that'll definitely lend itself well to just the work that the county is currently doing. Very minor, but would, I think, play a large role in the greater scheme of things. Thank you.
No, that's a great comment. If you have the color palette and whatnot, if you could, share that with Bill or Carla, and they can get that to me, we can work with that and make sure that it's reflective of your new branding. It's a great idea.
I actually have all that.
Sean, I can send you the guidelines.
You have that? Okay,
yes.
Great.
This is Tom Mason. I have some question here, and I like the design and the simplicity of it, but we have agriculture in the commerce. We also have it in the residential neighborhood that we'll be looking at. But agriculture is such a broad area. So what do we really mean by agriculture here? And somewhere I think we have to define that. I mean, we're going to have an agricultural district, which I'm assuming we'll look at later, but we're looking at 2 districts here, and we've got agriculture in both of them. But what does it really mean? Like could a person build a commercial grain facility in this commercial district? And if they did, I think 45 feet wouldn't do it for a height. So I'm just trying to determine. I mean, that when I look at all these uses, it's probably one of the broadest ones that's listed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great point, and those are the kind of details we need to get into as we get your feedback on the contents. I would say that in Kent County, based on my review, agriculture is, I'll use the word sacrosanct maybe, but it seems to be something that you all value, and so it tends to show up in every zone just about as a permitted use, and so that's a larger question, obviously, for the community is do we continue to allow that everywhere? Because some of these zones aren't developed currently, like some of this commercial, and we wouldn't want to say, well, you couldn't farm it while it was until such time that perhaps it was developed. So those are some of the things we'll have to work through. Do we want to allow agriculture in every zone? Do we want to limit it to certain zones? Those kind of questions. But I think we were erring, at least in this initial pass of things, erring on the side of what you currently are doing for these demonstration purposes.
Tom, agricultural, as it's a permitted use in most districts, is generally limited to like general farming, orchards, groves, nurseries, it's crops. So the more intense uses are like a grain facility, poultry farms are pulled out as separate uses.
Well, that's what I'm trying to address, that we understand. I mean, someone looking at this, everybody has a different idea of what agriculture is. And they're looking at this and it says agriculture permitted. It says permitted principal use. So someone reading that could say, well, I can build a chicken house. And maybe that's not where a chicken house should really be built from what we think, here in Kent County. So I was just trying to somehow differentiate what agriculture really is in the commerce district, or when we get to the residential neighborhood district. The very first one up here, it says agriculture as our permitted principal use. Of course, it's first, I guess, because maybe that's the way it is in the alphabet.
Tom, I think when we get into the content, each of these uses will have specific definitions or standards the way that they do in our ordinance now. They'll just all be in one place.
Okay, that'll be good.
Yes, yeah, that's a great point, Carla, and great question, Tom. Each of these uses in the use table will be defined, and they will be defined in a glossary. And we will hot link them actually, so you can click on agriculture, and it will take you to the definition. So, you can just compare and contrast that to the current code. It's going to be a lot simpler to use. So yeah, so if there's a question, I see agriculture. Well, I own a house in the RN district. I can do agriculture? What does that mean? I can click on it, go to that, and there'll be a clear definition of what that means and what it doesn't mean.
This is Bill Mackey. Just want to note that we are at our hour, and traditionally we do take a break. Madam Chair, should we take our break?
Yes, that seems like a good idea, Bill. So we will take a 15-minute break. So we'll be back here at about 7:13. And we'll see you.
And I'd like to note that we will not stop the recording, so all of your mics that are active will be picked up.
If we need to, maybe. Because it's going to be the YouTube, or I guess it'll be a Teams recording as well. Yeah, that's true. So yes, yes, yes.
They do the definition like Ag 1, 2, 3, and 4 is district. You can do just about anything with farming. Is where you get into smaller lot sizes, you get into hobby farming and stuff like that. You don't want to be doing something safe. Right. So there needs to be, but that's not tonight's meeting. Some of them need, like even myself, I had like US 301 corridor use. What's that? Yeah. I mean, how broad is that?
Well, it's really what's already in here, and then there would be, as he said, a chapter that will have all of the uses with all those special standards. Yeah.
I'm picking on it now, and it's just too early to process.
Yeah, exactly.
But he got me on the agriculture, because I was going to mention that.
Well, and I think if you look at our current ordinance, every single zoning chapter pretty much starts with agriculture as the first thing, and it's including horticultural, hydroponics, general farming, orchards, groves, or nurseries for growing or propagation of plants, trees, and shrubs, and that's what agriculture is limited to. And then when you get into the chicken farms, you get into the animal processing, livestock, it's a separate use.
Separate use in agriculture.
Yes.
And that's,
right.
But it just struck me that, you know.
I know.
It said agriculture.
You're trying very hard to set up a nice matrix here, so that when you start doing the Ag 1, you should be able to take this district can go Ag 1 or Ag 2 or Ag 3.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is everything, ag is the same, but then you get to livestock auction houses, that's a separate use, or you get to greenhouses are separate, poultry is separate, stables are separate. They're all agriculture.
Well, like a livestock auction house, where is it now in our? I mean, in some ways, that would be in commerce now.
I think it's actually only in AZD.
Well, now, but I mean, that's more of a specialized business. I mean, it's animals aren't staying there; they're there for a few hours, and then not.
Right.
And you know, some of us don't know that we'll ever have in Kent County. So that, you know, with the way things are today. Of course, who knows? 50 years from now, it could all. This will be redone again in 50 years.
Yeah.
And then I won't be here.
And so then, like the second use in AZD is keeping, daring, or raising for sale of animals, fish, birds, etc. And that's not in all the uses. It's not in all the zoning districts. So we do make a pretty clear distinction. And that'll get teased out.
Yeah, no, it's just, like I say, we're looking at format right now. That's
right.
That was the reason I brought up the scale, because it's just,
yeah.
Because if somebody
when
looks at it.
When you look at those drawings, 50 feet, 5 feet, it all looks the same.
It all looks the same. Yeah.
Right. And people need to visualize that, because it's even like where the one where you had the parking lot closer to the road. Why have the parking lot? You need the county. I think people, everybody here is trying very hard. You want to keep it agricultural. You want it to look rustic.
Keep it.
You want it right. So how are you going to do that? You got to keep the green space. You got to keep the setbacks. You got to keep all of it. Unfortunately, you've got a lot of blank land to work with. You can do it. I know this. We didn't get into it, but you go in there with putting up the new Dunkin' Donuts. I just want to get a prime example of the site plan. Go into the Dunkin', go in around the back, or go to a Chinese restaurant, and look at the in-stock spot for the drive-through to go through Dunkin' Donuts. You come out of that, when you're going, let's say you come in the entrance, you come here, your Dunkin' Donuts is right here. Well, you can't come in this entrance and go into their drive-through. Their drive-through is curved. You literally have to go all the way around and come in the other way. Now, why did they do that?
Well,
And it's so narrow, I can't see these guys coming through there.
take you guys with the double wheel pickup trucks.
I don't have
the
a double
dualies.
wheel, but yeah, but I
But you
can
know what I
see-
mean?
Yeah.
How big they are. Well, I'll tell you what. With that and the turning radius you got on those, you're going to have a hell of a time trying to drive through that drive-through without driving over the curb. Yes, you can drive over the curb, but now you're ruining the place. And that's just, you see, it's so. But I can understand why I went to the Chinese restaurant. That's where I saw it. I went to the Chinese restaurant last night. I'm looking at it. I said, what the? If I wanted to drive in there or coming in the entrance, I couldn't do it. How do you do something like that?
It's the town.
Well, I know, but
That's the best answer.
That's the best answer.
I don't know where they expect the cars to come, you know.
Right.
The only other way is to come in past the bank, drive up, come in around in the back way, down past the Chinese restaurant, and then come in that way. Or you drive around the parking lot. You can do that too, but people will be coming in, and then they're gonna try to turn in there, they're gonna drive over this curb,
Right.
and then the curb goes to the drive.
Then it curves.
You gotta go look at it. And picture yourself driving it.
But you know what? There'll be a lot of people using that thing.
Oh, yeah.
That'll be it'll probably equal McDonald's.
It's actually down in Centerville, it's actually better. The one they put up in Centerville has more traffic in it. Because I go by there a lot, because I work over, well, I haven't the last 6, 8 months, but my office is in Fort Meade. I drive past there a lot. And once they open that up, there's a constant line there, and McDonald's has reduced tremendously.
Well, it just amazes me how much traffic there is at McDonald's. It doesn't make any difference what time of the day you go by there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cars there.
Where's that?
McDonald's.
Oh, McDonald's, yeah.
You know?
Well, up to 10 o'clock. I don't particularly like what my wife does, the iced caramel. She likes a large caramel iced coffee.
Okay.
Now they're $2.56 after 10 o'clock. They're $1. Up to 10 o'clock, you can get a large.
So why are they more after 10 o'clock?
Well, that's just because they cut it in one. I don't know. It's their promotion. It's whatever, but it's been going for about 6 months.
Okay.
You get a large caramel iced coffee for it's 99 cents plus tax, $1.05.
Huh.
And she's always going in here for this. I think I bought it for the flower garden. But it's the same thing, and they have the same. You got the entrance up here at McDonald's. Here's McDonald's. Here's the entrance here. There's another entrance here.
Right.
Well, people coming in this entrance drive over to
Drive
concrete.
over the curb.
I do it all the time. I'll be the first one to know. And people coming in this way don't go around to get into that second lane. So when you drive in, that's wide open. These people back here, they're all bent out of shape.
Right.
Because you just drive in, right? Nobody moves up.
No, it's I wish they never used to have that second lane.
Yeah.
Where then you had to either drive around or go on up to the other entrance. I mean, if there were cars in line, you couldn't get in the line.
Yeah, it's I don't know who designs theirs, but that Dunkin' Donuts menu that's just awful. You gotta go look and see how narrow that is. I'm sure. Definitely nobody's driving in there like driving.
Or trailer.
Or trailer, you're absolutely right. You can't get through there. You have a tough time. The trailer can be so long in the way it turns. The trailer's going right up over.
Yep.
And all you wind up with is a bunch of black marks on top of the concrete, and then after a while, it'll start to break up.
It'll start to break up. That's right.
Funny story. Lastly, my office was in Wheeling. Right through where my office was, I was just off Route 70. You get off at the hospital exit, whatever. Well, they redid the intersection to come from the hospital around the corner and down onto Route 70. Well, they didn't make a round turn. They made a square. I was looking at that and I said, what the? I mean, you're literally, there's a red light here, you're literally come up from the red light, and it's an actual square to get into the entrance, the on-ramp going to Route 70. Now, you've got all these big 18-wheelers coming up there.
And it'd been so easy just to curve that.
I could not, couldn't understand that.
Well, every time we go to Middletown, I
understand how they built everything, their roads, where they go and don't go there. I mean, that's like, I don't know who designed that place. I mean, to me, somebody had to work overtime to make that difficult.
It's crazy. And that's where the plan comes in. You gotta literally lay out the whole property, even though there's nothing there. People just don't think. I hate to say that. They just don't think, how is it going to be used?
Right.
You know, sole story, build a building, but don't put the sidewalks in from the doors. Let the people walk for 3 months. See where they walk, put the sidewalks in. But you can't do that, you know, obviously you can't do that, but look at it like you're going to use it.
That's the important thing. How are you going to use it?
All our comments are recorded now about Dunkin' Donuts.
We didn't say anything bad.
Maybe it's just I'm watching it go down. I'm like, wait, it's going down pretty fast. It's the video. But yeah, you're right. That would be busy. Be busy. I'd be curious to know how many people they've got asking for, you know, coming in applying for the job. They've had to sign out for 3 months.
Yeah.
I'm curious to see how many people have applied. You can't find anybody to work anymore. Very difficult. I travel all, and it's not just here. I mean, I travel all 5 states, you know, talking to contractors or whatever. You cannot find people. People do not work. And if they do get somebody, they go to work for 2 days, take a day off, work for another day, take 2 days off.
And then they let them stitch the donuts there. It's better than being a laborer in Brambles. They don't get any donuts. Maybe Brambles ought to get a donut.
There you go.
Okay. So hopefully we're all back at our computers, even though I cannot see you. And we're ready to move forward on the next presentation from Sean, which will be the neighborhood residential.
Yes. So much like the commercial district, the residential neighborhood district would also be laid out the same way. We start, I'll share my screen, sorry. We start with an illustrative graphic that gives you a sense for what we're talking about in the district, the development pattern we're trying to achieve. In this case, you know, residential neighborhood is relatively, you know, it's your neighborhood scale development, but it's still larger lots to reflect the development pattern in Kent County. We have the intent, of course, the uses, and then we get into the use table, same exact concept, you know, and this is obviously the content is up for discussion eventually, but you know, for now you have principally permitted uses, special exception permitted use, principal uses, sorry, permitted accessory uses, and special exception accessory uses. This zone is going to be a little shorter. I mean, these will range from 4 pages to probably 8, just depending on the complexity of the zone. What you don't see in here are the environmental standards. We will have those in a separate section referenced. Instead of repeating them in every single one of these districts, like it is currently, we'll have those in a separate section. But the key here really is the same as the commercial. It's to answer the question, what can I do with my property? And then how can I do it? And so we do have, again, a regulatory graphic. We need to work on the scale, like we talked about earlier, but essentially what we want to show you is the building placement, we want to bring to life in a graphic the standards that are set forth in these tables so that you can visualize. We have all kinds of different metrics here, from minimum lot size to density, setbacks, and height. And then in certain instances in this district, there would be signage, generally for a neighborhood entrance signs, so we do have to include sign standards. And then because there are some uses in here that are not 100% single-family residential, we do need to include some information about parking. But generally speaking, this is going to be a relatively simple district. It's your single-family house. Where does that sited? And is there anything else we can use these properties for? Are there any questions about that? Again, same general layout, same program.
Sean,
yes.
I hate to be a broken record, but now this table combines two districts that have, and I know this is going in the weeds, but it's important because we're kind of starting at the other end, but we have a countryside 1-to-1 density and a rural residential 1-to-3, and our table, our planning table, shows the density here 1-to-1. So I guess I feel like we're starting on the wrong end of this. Do we know we're having one district here and we're going to delineate it, what is the current rural residential and the current countryside, or are we changing the density?
I really, at this point, I'm not prepared to talk about it. I don't know. The density at one dwelling unit per acre would apply to this residential neighborhood district if that's the way the county wants to go with it, or we could, maintain the one units per 3 acre. Is that what it is, or three? Or yeah.
No, Carla presented it's 1-to-1 for countryside and 1 per 3 for rural residential.
Yeah.
My point is, it's one or the other in one district, isn't it?
That's correct. It would need to be picked. We need to decide on that number.
But it sounds like that decision has to be made before we combine them, I guess.
Yeah, and if we decide not to combine these, it's simple enough to add another district. This isn't going to be that different. The graphics aren't going to be that different, whether it's a 1-to-1 or 1-to-3. Just but and this isn't going to be that different as far as the regulations go. But it may come down to 1 or 2 standards that are different, and if that's important enough to create a second zone or maintain a second zone, that's fine, and we can do that. It's relatively simple to do.
Okay, it seemed to be we would set the standards and then decide the density afterward. We would get these standards for our current districts and see where they fit, and then maybe we would be able to combine. But it seems like we're starting at the wrong end.
This is Pat. I have a comment about this. We have all these different districts that are in our current land use ordinance. And what would be the harm of developing a chart or these graphics for each one of them rather than trying to combine them when they are separate for a reason? So it would be simpler if people like this format. And if they do, and if we do and recommend that we follow this format, fine and well. But why can't we develop one for each of them that we currently have? Because I'm concerned about combining these when, as Joe has just pointed out, we have different densities, and some of them have different permitted uses and others than the other one does. So I'm concerned that we're trying to mix these things together without actually comparing apples to oranges. I mean, we are comparing apples to oranges. Why don't we just go ahead and do a graph for each one? And if we see that it would be simple, we could combine them, then we would do that. But doing it this way seems a little bit backwards.
Yeah, no, that we will be doing that. That's called the calibration table, where we'll be putting each zone next to each other and showing you what you currently have versus what we would suggest. So we're not there yet. And that, that's the risk of doing this way. I mean, I'm trying to keep this high level so that you can give me feedback on the format and layout. Let's don't get into the weeds, because we're not there yet, but we will go through that exercise. These are just supposed to be examples.
Okay, thank you.
So this is Cindy Genther. I have comments. I've received comments as a real estate broker that our land use ordinance is overly complex, that maybe we have too many zoning districts, that maybe combining them would be of benefit to our citizenry and and to our land users. And I think we should be looking for the opportunity to combine them and to become less restrictive.
This is Billy Norris. Can I interject something too?
Yes, please.
It was my understanding when we started this that number one, in previous meetings we talked about combining districts, and everybody seemed to agree to that at the time. I think I'm right on that. It's been a while since we all got together, but in defense of Mr. Suter here and this process, I view this presentation here as simply an example of categorizing things and an example of how it's going to look. It has. I don't take this as anything to do with the content, the ultimate content that will be in the new zoning ordinance or proposal or suggestions from any of us. So I think I have to think that this is a wonderful format, whether or not we have 2 zoning designations or whether we have 20 zoning designations. So I think that I will say that I think we're jumping the gun talking about content instead of talking about format on how we're going to present this in the future. So that's my take on this. I don't know. That's how I think. I think that's what Mr. Suter's trying to say here.
Yeah, that's correct. We could have presented this blank, and sometimes we'll do that, but we try to fill it in to give you an idea, and with the caveat that let's not focus too much on the content. It's hard to do, though. I recognize that. You want to get into the content, and we will get there. There's lots of content to talk through here. So yes, that's exactly right. For the purposes of tonight, I want to hear from you. Are we including the right things? Should we be including anything else in each of these districts? Is this enough information? Is it too much information? Are the graphics clear? Like the comment about the scale is really important. I've already relayed that to our partner NV5. Those are the kind of things. The color scheme. Is it too small? Can you read it? Are the labels clear? Because, like I said, we will build these out once we get to the point where we've calibrated the standards, meaning answered some of your questions about what is the minimum lot size, what is the maximum density, what is the minimum building area, those kind of things. Once we've hashed through those, we're going to then build these things out for all the districts, whether that's 20 or 10 or 15 or whatever I think is best. for the community. So that's where we are. But the important part is, are the graphics of quality? Can you read them? Because that's actually, like I said, we can change numbers. If you tell me 50 feet is wrong, it needs to be 70 feet, that's easy. If you tell me 3 months from now or 6 months from now, Sean, I hate the layout, let's fix it all, let's change it all, let's do this and that, that's hard. So so that's what I'm looking for now, is to get your buy-in on the layout and all that. We'll get into the content.
Sean, this is Bill Mackey.
Yes.
And I just want to say that as my comment, and we haven't talked about this yet, I think it would be helpful to have one sample of what one of the critical area districts might look like. Because the sort of presentation with vegetation, et cetera, will be really important to communicate what the critical area is all about. I think people who are involved in the county, who've lived here a long time, certainly understand it. I think new folks who come here and are not familiar with the Maryland system may not know much about it. And this would be an opportunity to have a little bit of an educational piece, especially in the illustrative graphic. So maybe one sample in that area would be helpful. Because I know I believe there's 4 proposed districts for critical area.
Yes, that sounds good.
Hey, Sean, just a suggestion. So we don't have this. This is Chicky Sijbani. So we don't keep going over and over again. Can you just pick the area and just apply all the restrictions that go with it? So we're not, going back and forth over this. We understand it's an example. I hope everybody right now understands this is an example. But when you're presenting this example, can you just make it about one area, whatever that is, apply all the filters and everything else that go with it to simplify the conversation, please? That would be greatly appreciated. I think not just by me, by the whole board.
Sure. Are you saying now or at a later date? I'm not
on a later date.
Yeah.
What Mr. Mackey said about applying one for a critical area, just pick one of the segments there and just apply all the filters that go with it, even as an example. I understand it's not concrete, but just it will simplify your life and everybody else here.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. It's a good suggestion. We can do that.
Any more comments or questions for Sean before we open it up to the public?
Madam Chair, this is Cindy McCann. I have one comment.
Please.
Sean, I really like the graphics. It is so useful. It will be so useful to the public to be able to see, a depiction of the neighborhood. The tables are great. Anyone familiar with our ordinance knows there's just a whole lot of narrative and it can be unwieldy to weed through.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my comments for feedback has to do with the use tables. And I'm just wondering whether it might not be easier if the tables are done by key. So where we have the uses, and then in the little box to the right, there's the key for whether it's a permitted use or a special exception principal use or special exception accessory use. I wonder whether it might even be more visually appealing to have boxes for all the permitted uses alphabetically and then a box for all the special exception uses. Maybe we could see a comparison and see which looks visually easier on the eyes.
Yes.
But it looks great.
That's a good suggestion. We can do that.
Cindy, this is Carla. I was going to say I had that initial reaction, and the more I've kind of looked at it, I think the single alphabetical list is starting to look better, because then if you look for a use, you only have to find it in one table, as opposed to go, all right, is it permitted? No. All right, let me check the next one. Check the next one. So it would be a good comparison though to see.
No, I hear you, Carla.
Okay, good.
All right. Well, thank you, Sean.
Thank you all. Good feedback.
Yeah, there was lots of good feedback. So let's open it up for public comment and just a few guidelines here. We're going to try to limit comments to about 3 minutes per person. So if you have something longer than that, we're asking that you submit it in writing to the task force for review. Keep the comments, if you can, related to the topics on tonight's agenda. And please state your name and speak directly into the microphone for the recording. So let's, I know we have several folks on the line and some may be in the audience. So let's just open it up for a comment at this point.
Madam Chair, there's a question as to whether the phones are being considered first or the people in the audience in person.
Let's do the phones first.
Okay, thank you. So is there anyone on a call who would like to make a comment? If you're listening to the live stream, you will need to mute that before you make your comment.
Cindy McCann here again. Just the call-in number is on the agenda, but if anyone's listening and needs it, you can call in to comment at 1-872-239-8359, and then the conference ID is 898-430-385#, and that information again is in the agenda.
Thanks, Cindy.
There would appear to be none, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay, so if there are no no one that wants to comment on the phone, is there anyone in the audience that would like to comment? And I can't see Bill, so maybe you want to moderate.
Certainly. Members of the audience are seated in the order that they registered. So the closer you are to the podium, the earlier registration. So we can certainly take folks in the order of registration. And you'll need to press the button so the light turns green.
My name is Janet Christensen Lewis. I'm a resident of Kent County. First of all, I'm going to repeat something that's been said tonight because there seems to be a steamroller moving forward to combine districts. I think it's important that all of the districts be broken out. I know you're just looking for content, but I don't like to see this move forward in the way that it's moving forward. I think all the districts should be broken out, and it would have been a lot less controversial had you done that, rather than bringing these together tonight as combined districts, because there are issues with what's going on. And then in terms of the graphics, I find the graphics to be, I mean, I think graphics are important, but I don't find these graphics to be particularly illustrative of what Kent County looks like or what we'd like to see. So I basically think there needs to be some work on the graphics. I think that the tables are okay. But as I went through and compared some of the things, okay, I'm a homeowner. I'm not an engineer. I'm not an architect. I'm a homeowner. I go to the map, I find out what district I'm in, and then I come to this table and it says that, let's say I live on a residential lot, third of an acre, or whatever the minimum is, and it says that I can have a stable. But if you go to the original land use ordinance, there's a whole bunch of caveats about what that means. No, you cannot have a stable on a property that size because there's setbacks that have to be for the horse barn. There's minimum acreage for a horse, and you can't have multiple horses on anything less than an acre. I mean, so I don't understand. And before you even get started, you've already said that you have to go to other places. You know, you've got this page and you've got these uses, but you also have to go to Article 3 and you have to go to Article 4 if you want to look up what the general uses are and the applicability is. I think that the current land use, because it's wordy, should be combined into some of these tables. But I think that you're getting so simplistic that people are going to have a piece of property and be building their horse barn and putting a horse on it and not understanding that that's going to be against the zoning code. So I think you've moved. I think you've moved pretty far. You know, things like you've got that you can have a greenhouse. Well, you can't have a greenhouse unless it's 200 feet from your property line, and it has to be landscaped. And you can have, you know, mobile homes where it's not even in here. Mobile homes were grandfathered in. So somebody that has a mobile home can replace the mobile home. You just can't have a new mobile home. There's all kinds of things that, as you go through the code, it's not present in in this table and is not conclusive. And whereas if you read through the current zoning, yes, it's complicated. I'm not defending the way in which it's laid out, but it's quite clear what you can and can't do. When it says you can have a stable, it immediately tells you what the conditions under which you can have a stable is. And this does not do that. And I'm probably over my 3 minutes by now. I feel the same thing. You know, I mean, looking at this as combined is really kind of frying my brain because you've got things together that shouldn't be together. And again, I know you just want information on feedback, but it needs to be taken out of this format. And you need to go back to the original districts. And then as the task force moves forward, and may change some of the conditions under which things are happening in the county, that's when you can start to combine things. And it seems to me what you said is that it's a simple thing to do. That you can add things, you can subtract things, but you can't change the whole format. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Watson, and I'm a Chestertown resident, Kent County fan, and resident also. My comments, I'd just like to echo what Janet said, and that is that the the concept looks fine. I mean, I think I agree with everybody who likes the simplicity. I think there's some thoughtful comments about all of that. But I think I would have liked to have seen this applied to an actual district as we have it. I agree with the goal to simplify, absolutely. And if there's a way to combine these, that would be great. But I think as a tool, you need to see the two districts that you're trying to combine in this format and then look carefully at which uses apply to each and how that's going to work. And you are going to have to go back and forth to see what the definitions are and the standards are. Landscaping is not in this. And that's a big miss, I think. How are people going to understand what their landscaping standards are in this format? So that's something that I see as missing. Second, simply on the graphics, They're beautiful. I think they don't exactly express Kent County. I think what Janet may be suggesting is we not try to be architectural, maybe a little bit more conceptual. If you look at the example for the potential development in the Commerce District, if we are asking that you not have a lot of parking in the front and the side, or in front of your property, don't draw it this way. So this is, I think our examples need to be conforming to what we're asking for. And that goes with the landscaping. The landscaping is shown. I don't know if that conforms because we don't have anything about the landscaping. So that's basically it, and extremely important to look at scale. And I would recommend, and when you're doing the housing one, figure Roman numeral 2-5B, which is on page 5, you've got two different kinds of setbacks, and they're not labeled accordingly. You've got one set of setbacks saying accessory non-harm structure side setback. That's great. Then why don't we also say principal, whatever the PP stands for, PP side setback 10-foot minimum. So it's very clear which of the setbacks is applying. I would not use not to scale. This is really dangerous because people, once they're given pictures, they think they're getting the information through the picture. And you need to draw it absolutely to what you expect. And if you don't, we're in trouble. So the scale is really odd. I think if you used dashed lines to show your setback lines, you may be able to do a little bit more with that and allow your artists a little bit more leeway in terms of where they place these structures on the property line. But you've got to do it to scale. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
My name is John Leitzinger. I live in Chesterville. H.L. Mencken famously said, for every complex problem, there is an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong. I think we've gone too far in terms of an attempt at simplification here. And the devil is going to be in the details. I could spend hours with you just going over my issues with what's been handed out, which of course only seen since this evening. Which really brings me to the real reason I wanted to talk this evening, and that's process more broadly. I've spent some time recently with the planning group at in Newcastle County because everybody is concerned that we don't end up like Middletown, which is, of course, an incorporated area within Newcastle County. But Newcastle County and its council must, under Delaware state law, revisit and redo their comprehensive zone plan every 10 years. And every 5 years, they modify it. But the process, from start to beginning, in terms of their 10-year process, is a 3-year process. And I think we're beginning to get the sense here that we're talking about color codes and graphics, and we've gotten to none of the details in this presentation. We are very far from being able to adopt rules which pertain to the very many uses we have here, some of which I suspect are going to be very controversial within the county, uses which are not currently acceptable and which in and of themselves demand substantial public comment, which is not feasible given the COVID epidemic and the current state of technology and the issues we've even had here this evening with such little things as echoes. But public input, you see, there's a half a dozen people here, but we hardly represent the entire county. So I have a lot of detailed comments, which I could certainly will put in writing, but I want to emphasize that I'm a little disappointed that we don't have more here today, given the immense amount of ground we have to cover within the previously described schedule that's been laid out.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to offer comment? If not, if I see that someone, Doug West, has raised their hand. Is Doug on the phone?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Doug West from Quaker Neck. I applaud your effort to make this more user friendly. I mean, I think that's wonderful, but I would really like to see all the zoning districts to start with all the zoning districts as they are now. And then at the end of the process, if we decide, yes, we can combine them, okay, we can do that. But to your presentations tonight, each one that you've combined, you've taken the higher density of development in each of them. And that's what I think is quite of a concern. So if to start with, you could leave all the districts as they are, go through this, and then at the end, yes, maybe some of them can be combined to make it simpler, but I applaud the idea of making it user friendly is wonderful. But I think we're not. It's a little scary from our perspective, and I'm not saying you're intentionally combining it for that reason, but that's the way it comes across. So, thank you for your effort, and we'll be working. Hopefully watching you through this process. So thanks again.
Thank you, Doug. Are there other comments, either in the audience or on the phone? Okay, hearing none. Are there comments from task force members?
This is Paul Ruby. I have just one comment, really. I have to say I agree with Pat and some of the audience that came up to speak tonight. I think maybe we ought to take a look at what is existing. Do the chart there and give us a walkthrough how we go from what exists to what is proposed, and do that for each district. So I think that would help for clarity, as well as it would help us. I think everybody here seeing what's the path from going to what is a very complex ordinance to something that is simpler and everybody can understand, but you still want to keep the way things, let's say, the way they are, versus combining everything all together. We've got to address everybody's comments and show that path. I guess I can't sit here and tell you how to do it. We'll leave that up to Mr. Suter, but I think he, from seeing his head going up and down there on the camera, I think he knows what I mean.
Yes, that's the plan. We're building out those calibration tables, and what we'll do is we'll show you what you have, and then we'll show you what we're proposing that you could tweak or change, and that's definitely in the plan. So you're getting ahead of me, but I understand why. It's exciting to get into those details, so we'll get there.
Madam Chairman, part of our minutes we've read, and I know the last meeting was unfortunately canceled, but we talk about structural changes recommended by the task force, structural changes in the use recommended by the consultant and by the public. But it seems like we're operating under the supposition that that's what we're going to argue or discuss or revise, are the changes that may not be needed to be changed. Maybe the greater public that may not be participating may feel they're content with many parts of the land use ordinance as it stands. But it seems we give more weight to structural changes than having quantitative analysis, whether it's done by staff or a consultant, on what these changes will mean to the county. We have a comp plan that universally in the state of Maryland is championed by the smart growth people, the ag community, and it seems to me we need to recognize that our current land use ordinance, with all of its flaws and changes, primarily because it's 18 years old, needs to be tweaked and changed and reorganized. But I hate to do it under the supposition that we have pages of changes to make. And I read back, I'm reading Mr. Suter's comment to Mrs. Langenfelder about possible changes in the ag zoning. He responded, there are not many changes will take place in AZD. We don't know that at all. We don't know anything right now. We've had comments that people want changes, and I think because of that, and we need to give weight and make sure the public understands what they like about a land use ordinance, what is attractive to their land use, because it's not just change. Every change affects neighbors, it affects other industries, other businesses. They need to be allowed due deference in the new land use ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Other comments from task force members? I have one comment, kind of following on Joe's point, and maybe this is directed towards Bill. Given that we can't have full public participation because of where we find ourselves in the pandemic, and recognizing that we're likely to extend this process beyond the end of the year anyway, I mean, is it possible that we are a little bit more deliberate in slowing it down so that we can hopefully over time increase public participation? I mean, I think that the more folks that get vaccinated, the more comfortable folks might feel, engaging in a discussion in a location that's not at our offices. When we did the comp plan, we used the high school. I think that there's other venues and ways that we could just engage the public more fully as we get a little bit further into the, having everyone be vaccinated. Because I think we can see that we're not really this group that we've gathered this evening is not a full representation of the county.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with you that we can broaden our participation over time. I'm hopeful that with the universal vaccination that the governor has set as April 27th, might allow us to have one of those big roundtable meetings, possibly in June, and I'm working towards a location for that. I'd also like to say that having a published schedule of topics that might cover several months, more specific than what we're allowed to do now, might be helpful. And I was wanting to offer to the group, if you would consider a permanent schedule, for example, second and fourth Wednesdays at 6 p.m. I know we've been trying to do a 3-week cycle, but that's been difficult, and we've literally run up to the most basic problem. Tomorrow the Planning Commission has a meeting, so you all are doing back-to-back meetings as a result of the 3-week cycle. So if that were something acceptable, then we would be looking at April 14th and April 28th for the public forum, and then each month, second and fourth Wednesdays, and shooting for June for really converting to a more accessible option. And I would like to say that we will continue to offer some form of remote participation for those who have concerns throughout this process.
Bill, just a comment. I can appreciate getting together more to move the process, but one of the more impressive things I think the county commissioners did, we have a pretty good task force here. Active business people in retail, merchandise, real estate, agriculture, the nonprofits, and 2 meetings a month is, we're going to lose them. I mean, these are the people that volunteer and are carrying the heavy lifting. And I guess I just feel that, I mean, if we go a month or 2 longer or 6 months, it was 18 years. I mean, I'd rather do, it's probably going to be another 18 years, and a lot of us won't be here for that one, but it just seems like our chairman said, I think I'd rather do it right. And actually, in the comments made about maybe by the summer, we'll be seeing people come in and we can get more publicity out, and our task force can get to their neighbors more. As everyone knows, people that have tried to participate, and maybe tonight was fine, but we didn't hear from anyone, but it's been impossible for the public to really participate for the since we started. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just add, I don't disagree with Joe, but I would also be concerned that June, like opening up vaccines at the end of April and getting the majority of the county vaccinated by June seems a little unlikely to me. So I would rather have us err on the side of caution. And I know with our comp plan meetings, some of those meetings we had, I don't know, I think the first one, and Carla may remember, but we had maybe 40, 50 people in attendance. So we had a good turnout. And I think that we could have the same for this if we just slow it down a little bit and wait for people to feel more comfortable.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to add to that one last thing. This is not for, I agree with Mr. Hickman and Ms. Cole, and I don't believe in slowing it down. I feel like we just keep moving forward as we are, and we just make the decision-making part, the final decisions and the final say part going forward. I feel like no offense to anybody on here, I just feel like we're moving slow already and we're on a deadline. And I feel like if you don't stay on a deadline, we're doing a disservice to what we've signed up to do. And I 100% agree with you guys that we need more participation. I'm for that. And I feel like we still need to power forward right now, just plow through what we're doing right now and just wait till we get to the decision-making part till later on. The 2 times a month thing, that is going to be difficult. Maybe we figure out a way to schedule out 1.5 hours or just more to point things. And unfortunately, I feel like if we utilize this time better to actually hit the points that we need to as we're going along, I think that will help expedite the process as well. Just putting it out there. But I do agree, we do need public participation. We're doing public service here by being here. And at the same time, I highly disagree with slowing it down. I feel like we're going slow enough already. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Billy Norris here. Can I interject something, please?
Please.
I have to agree with Chicky. I don't see any reason to slow anything down. I think that there's been notifications go out to the public. As a business owner myself, I have designated and agreed to do this job that I was asked to do. So I am prepared to do it. And I am prepared to meet twice a month at the minimum. I think we owe the service to the county to get something done. And it seems to me that there is a push for some reason, to slow it down. we have a job to do, and I think we need to do it. So I agree 100% with Chicky. I think that people know about it. I think you could make the excuse that the pandemic. But you're also going to make the same excuse that they're staying at home, not going out. What better thing for them to do than to watch us or to be a part of this? I think you have to address the fact of whether the public is really interested in what we're doing. We've discussed this all before, and we need to move forward. If we stretch it into 2 or 3 years, I think you're going to lose interest from everybody. So I fully believe that we need to move forward and go at a faster pace than we are at extending it further. That's my thoughts.
Maybe I can add some clarity from someone who writes these things all over the place and has done a bunch of them relative to engagement. The engagement on a zoning code rewrite is different than the engagement around a comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan, you really want as many people from the general public as possible to come in and help shape the vision for the community. I agree that zoning is so technical and in the weeds that unless you have some big picture things that you want the public input on, it's better to do what we're doing here, in my experience, which is to have a smaller group, a technical group that can get into the weeds. And I think that that's where we found a lot of success. It's sausage making is what I always liken it to, right? Most people aren't interested in the sausage making, they're interested in the sausage. So we want to give them something to react to, the larger public. And people generally, in my experience, on zoning code rewrite engagement, don't come out until there's something for them visually to look at, and that tends to be the map. So, if there are no changes to the map whatsoever, and we're keeping all the same zones, most people are going to be like, meh, there's not that much going on. If we're combining districts, changing zones, that kind of thing, that's going to bring people out. But what you don't usually get a lot of interest in that sausage making piece. You get a lot more interest when there's something to react to, in my experience. That's just, hopefully that's helpful from somebody who does this a lot.
Thank you, Sean. Any other comments? Cindy.
Yes, this is Cindy Genther. I agree with Chicky and Bill Norris. We've been asked to do this task. Sean explained well our role here. We are technicians. We use this land use ordinance more so than the public does. That's why we're asked to participate in this. We have a job to do, and I suggest we keep rolling forward, as Billy had mentioned. And I also agree with Sean. The public will come out when there's something to respond to, and at this point in time, there's really not much. So I think they'll be out in force when the time is appropriate.
Thank you, Cindy.
Just want to add one more piece to it. I think we have a great board here. We have a great group of people here. And I feel like if this group that we have put together here, we can at least lay down a very solid groundwork for it. And then we let the public come in. And when the public time comes in, we maybe spend some extra money to educate them or spend that extra time or give them that time. If we at least lay down the foundation of it, then they have something to see. Right now, they're just looking at an open field and it's kind of hard to navigate that. So let's work together, all of us on this board together. Let's work together in the right direction and come up with a nice plan or a foundation for us to present to the public and go from there and see what everybody says from that point.
Okay, this is Bill Sutton. Can you hear me?
Yes, Bill, we can hear you.
I find that over the years on these kind of projects, the longer you drag them, the slower they get until you wind up having to support another whole group of people. And you got a totally different aspect of what's out there. So I think we do have an excellent group of people that have been put on this committee. I've said that more than once. So I think we need to move forward, and maybe we got 1 foot ahead of the other too far in the last week or 2 or 3, but it's not too far that you can't turn around and keep right on going. That's all. That's it.
Thank you, Bill. Any other comments from the task force?
We have someone from the public coming up, Kim.
Okay.
My name is Frank Lewis. I'm a farmer here in the county. And I guess my concern about these remarks about combining the districts and then presenting a document to the public for comment implies that you've already made the decisions about how the combination works, including when you're combining districts with different densities and things of that sort. It's true at that point you've got sausage you can present to the public, but you also are going to be committed to the model you've created. And it's going to be much harder if it turns out that's not a good decision to reverse it at that point. I believe it makes much more sense to do what Ms. Langenfelder suggested earlier, is the new format to make it more simplified, more graphic, and clear to everyone is great. That's, I think, what we all would agree to. But the current zoning and the current districts have all been arrived at over many decades here in the county, and a great deal of planning in the past, a great deal of public input over an extended period of time. I mean, this whole process has been going on for at least 40 years with modifications every few years. And it represents an enormous reflection of public input, experience of people running the system, and modification over time. And to make global decisions about combining districts, which significantly alters some of those characteristics, and then present that for comment and possible modification, seems like the wrong way to go. It seems to me that the appropriate response is to do as Mrs. Langenfelder suggested, keep all of the same districts, move to the new format, and have them simplified and present that to the public. That should be the sausage. And then if you look at that and say, indeed, there are districts here that are so similar, we can combine them with some modification of definitions, it becomes much easier to do and much simpler to arrive at a final product. Whereas if Sean makes unilateral decisions about combining things where the standards are different, that's a huge content difference that he has made in a singular fashion, and trying to reverse that after the fact is going to be much more difficult. So I believe that it would be far better, as has been suggested, to retain the detail in the current system in regard to all the districts. And then at the end, when you have adapted them and put all the content in these districts and look at it, it becomes relatively simple to see where those can be combined and simplified further. But the actual districts that have been arrived at here is a combined decision that's been made by thousands of people over an extended period of time. It reflects an enormous experience in this county with what the zoning reflects and what its purpose is. And to unilaterally change that without an opportunity for public input, I think is the wrong way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there are no further comments, I think we should move on to request for research from the task force members. So these are analysis or things that you'd like to see from the Department of Planning, Housing and Zoning that they can prepare for us so that we can start to dig into some of that content. And Bill, do you want to add anything here?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We did try to anticipate some of the requests by the information we presented earlier today. So I hope that that was satisfactory.
Bill, the information was good that Carla presented and you presented. I'd like to have it earlier if we can, and it's just too hard to take it all, digest it at the meeting. Thank you.
Ms. Cole, I just want to clarify a comment. I just want to make sure Mr. Lewis is aware. We're not trying to just go ahead and say when I'm referring to let's move forward with this. I'm not referring to combining any zones or combining any of that. I'm referring to the fact that we just need to keep progressing forward. All of us here together are going to hopefully jointly make decisions from comment from everybody in the public or whoever is part of it. And we're all going to do this together. And once we have figured,
sorry, Chicky, feedback.
Is that better?
Not really.
How about now? Is that better?
You can try.
Okay. We're all jointly going to put something together to present to the public. This is not going to be already decided. You know, it's not, we're not trying to deceive the public. This is here, we're together, designated to be here to help make that decision. And I think we already addressed it with Mr. Sean that simplifying all those zones is going to be the easiest thing to, and then go from there and then working our way down rather than going down and spreading our way out. Like, you know, so I think everybody's on the same page, I believe, on there. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. So any specific request for Carla and the other members of the team in terms of analysis? It might be, you know, Bill, I'm thinking it might actually be easier when we lay out some of those meetings and see what the content is. If you have, you know, then we can, if we saw that in advance, we might be able to come up with specific things that we want to see to prepare us to have that discussion.
Okay, we can work on that.
All right, if there's no specific asks at this time, then I'm going to turn it over to Carla or Bill, who's going to tell us what we should be reading in preparation for our next meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Bill Mackey. My computer was malfunctioning. I had to take it to a docking station. And so I think that we're on readings for the next meeting. Am I correct?
Yes, that's where we are.
Yes. So my plan was, with your permission, was to use the content from the March 10th meeting. There will be sort of two sets of homework. I think the team in the department would try to provide you all with places in the code that the different topics relate to, so you could actually go to pages in the code and see the sections in the code that are being referenced. And then you all, the homework would be is to walk through that list from fellow task members of their concerns and issues and be prepared to hear from them and just sort of air those issues and what those topics might be. So that would be helpful. We'll try to get a list of references together soon. As you're aware, we're down a number of team members on my staff, so we'll be working hard to put together a list for you as soon as possible. Thank you.
Great. That sounds very helpful, Bill. Thank you.
Bill, a question. You said we're going to do the March 10th, the next meeting?
If you're willing to, that would be my plan for the next step.
Well, my question had a lot to do with agriculture. I think it's a bad time to present agricultural changes. There were pretty significant requests in that. And I think it's not a great time for, we had March 10th was okay, but I just think there may be concerns from some of the ag community, and it may be difficult to participate. Thank you.
So then the request would be to defer matters related to ag from that list.
That would be my preference.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
And Bill, just for clarification, it sounds like there's general agreement that we would hold the 2 meetings per month, the 2nd and the 4th week on the Wednesdays, and proceed as you laid out.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. We will do that. So our next meeting would be April the 14th.
Well, Kim, when would we be looking at those changes? And if we don't do it now, I mean, I think that's just we're just delaying something. Early April might be better than May or June, or I think that's part of what this task force has been challenged to do, and that's why I've agreed to do it. So I really don't know why we want to delay that part of it.
No intent to delay it. We have other topics to discuss, don't we? I just think agriculture's particular timeliness of agriculture is more important than some of the others. Timeliness of the constituency that would benefit. It's the largest land use in the county.
Well, I definitely agree with that, and that's why I felt it was one of the ones that should definitely be addressed rather than not addressing it.
Well, I assume we're giving the same weight to everything no matter when it's addressed. We're not minimizing that. That's my opinion. I hope we give every consideration to everyone.
Well, yeah, we certainly would, but I think most of the things in that those text amendment change, most of them deal with agriculture. I mean, if we eliminate them, there are some others, but that's eliminating a good bit of that discussion.
I didn't understand you, the echo, but if you eliminate the changes?
Well, we're eliminating the discussion on the text amendments if we don't talk about agriculture. And we talk about there were others on waterfront and this and that, but it's just my feeling that we should proceed. And, whatever. No, that's why we have a task force.
That's exactly right. I'm not saying it's making it any better. I wish there were 100 people participating at every topic where they felt important. It's not going to happen, but my sense is there agriculture. I don't think it has, as Sean said, I don't think it has such a special place. It's just our biggest land use and our biggest industry. That's why. Right. That's why we take it very seriously. It's not because we have some warm spot in our heart. It's what we do here. That's why we're here. That's why people move here. So I think that's important.
Well, and that's why I feel we should be addressing it.
Well, I assume in late June you could do it just as well as
well, that's a matter. Early April is no different than late June to me. Late June to me is worse than early April. Everybody has a different what they do and they don't do.
We're not going to find perfection.
We're not going to find perfection, and we're not going to find time that suits everyone.
No. All right.
That's just my comment. And I guess Bill will decide.
I think the issue is, right, there's a seasonality to farming that impacts when we do it as opposed to discussing other topics. So I guess we'll defer to Bill to sort that out.
I'll work on that, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we're at the end of the agenda. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.